Ladies and gentlemen, hello, hello, hello. This should be a pretty interesting video because in this video we are going to talk about a book, a type of book that I've been looking forward to reading for a long time. Uh, I've actually been looking for at least the past 2 years, excuse me, for female authors because I'm a man, which means that I'm not a woman, and our sexes are arguably the most definitive thing that we can say distinguishes a human from a human, right? I mean, we've had the conversation numerous times already. It's been articulated. It's been beaten into the ground. Martin Luther King really was the final in the civil rights movement, but Martin Luther King was really the final, nail in the coffin about, you know, the whole nature of the nonsense around the conversation surrounding people's skin colors or even their cultures, right? Or their circumstances. Those things that make us different are far more relative than the absolute difference of our biology. And we've been going through this issue of a so-called gender war for probably just about my whole adulthood. I mean, we've been going through it for much longer than that, but the intensity, right? Like the intensity and the focus, of truly how bad it is. The general conversation. I'd say most of my adulthood because at least in the past there was it was much more likely if you had something sour to say about or in some way we're holding women accountable for being women that there'd be substantial people still trying to come around and tell you about, oh, hey, that's not true, blah blah blah, what you see on the internet is not real, or you're living in fantasy land or whatever the case may be. But now there's a pretty solid understanding among men of just you know really what our condition is. And I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about everything from women's inability to match with us intellectually. I'm talking about the the trap of marriage. Men are really, really starting to come to realize the gravity of these things. The truth of these things. And so I have been looking forward to. I've been looking for female authors, female philosophers who, you know, can speak on the condition of being a woman, who can break down the, you know, these certain elements about being a woman, right? And articulate them as best as possible, so that men can understand, and not so that men can understand. Really, I mean, really more so just like I want it to be authentic, right? I want it to be genuine. I want her to genuinely just talk about, the manner of being a woman, the types of things that are, within women, so that I could understand better for myself. Um, and because the opinions that we can garner about the sexes, um, are not, every single one is not about misandry or misogyny. It's not about that. It's really just about acknowledging who you are. And we've been having this conversation for an extremely long time, much longer than Steph is cold, much longer than alpha male strategies, much longer than the internet in general. Um, and somebody like me, I love history. Now, back in 2022, oh, 3 years. So yeah, back in about 2022 is when I read Stephanie Dowrick's Intimacy and Solitude, I believe it's called. And that book disturbed me. I mean, honestly, I got about not I got probably about halfway maybe through that book, if not a little more than halfway through that book, and I had to put it down. Now, why did I put it down? I put it down because you know a part of it, like it really started to, you know, when you go through a creation of a work, right? You have the beginning and the middle and the end, and by the time you start to really get into the middle, you really start to get into, like, you know, the meat and potatoes about what somebody's philosophy is, right? Or like what somebody's point is, and the inner workings about what they feel. And for Stephanie Dowrick, you know, there was so much of this encouragement of the emasculation of men, a justification of homosexuality, you know, just generally revealing a prerogative of destroying the essence of what it means to be masculine, and really a demonstration of self hatred for being a woman and for being feminine. Now, I'll say as well that I understand why women would hate themselves for being women. And first and foremost, it is because of the, you know, understanding, the concurrence that they are inferior to men, at least physically. And then because at least physically, uh, well, you know, that is a substantial enough reason. And Mary Wollstonecraft here, she also puts that agreement away very, very early. I mean, multiple times she affirms that she agrees with this notion, but, you know, she agrees, she understands, and we'll get into that. And I think that that is a huge point of getting into that. But I actually completely got through this book, thankfully, and there are some worthy things of responding to here. Um, and I would encourage you, of course, to read the book yourself. I also have a couple of other things in here that I'll be reviewing in future videos, and this might even be like a multi-part sort of thing, you know, rather than, you know, talk your head off the whole time. But yeah, so Mary Wollstonecraft, 1792, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And I want to direct you to the cover of this work. The cover of this work looks like this. It says, "It is time to effect a revolution in female manners, time to restore them to their lost dignity and make them as a part of the human species." I wanted to show you that cover, because, you know, again, right, like her point is to restore the lost dignity of women. And what is this lost dignity that she's referring to? She's referring to women's capacity to reason. Mary Wollstonecraft's ultimate arguments are that, I'll say it's two big things. It's that, uh, women, is that all of the ways that women are lacking, besides the physicality, right? But all the ways that women are lacking intellectually are due to oppression from men. That's really her. That's like one of her biggest points. And number two, yeah, and number two, that women want to be our friends. That she thinks that women should be allowed to be the friends of men. Neither of these arguments are new arguments for me. You know, I've heard these arguments before, but again, like I said, the reason why I've been looking for female authors, female thinkers, female philosophers, is so that they can give me a more, you know, elaborate, you know, explanation of the sentiments behind feeling this way. I wanna first start you off with how I actually found this book. Okay, so the way that I found this book was I had found out about ducking stools, cucking stools. I was reading the diary and autobiography of John Adams, where I learned about the ducking stools. And ducking stools are a form, or were a form, of women's punishment. And um, these were used, you know, 18th, 19th century. Um, and they were mostly used as a form of punishment for scolders, gossipers, women who like to argue a lot. And this was one of the cons. They would put them on like a plank of wood and dunk them in a body of water. their whole selves, and it's a form of public humiliation, right? It's a form of public shaming, because in our societies or throughout history, the cultures have done various things in order to maintain the sanctity of their communities, right? To maintain order, to maintain principles. And women's punishments were one of those things. They also had scolding bridles. They put things on their faces. They put these bridles on their faces. And again, it's because they argue. They argue. You want to go back and forth all day. You want to keep talking and keep talking. And it's like, shut up. You know what I mean? And the interesting thing is that they called them women's punishments because they understood the woman's nature, and that these would be predominantly women's punishments for them having these sorts of problems in their society. Now, something I hate is that you'll have men be able to go and say, oh yeah, well, these are forms of women's punishments to deal with this issue of this problem that we have with women, of these ways of women, and they'll go and say, oh well, look, this was so cruel, this was so messed up, these things were made specifically for women, completely obfuscating the fact that again, men did still get punishments, cruel punishments, excessive punishments, regardless of how you want to call them, morally questionable punishments. But far too many people, men and women, believe that women should be absolutely impervious to punishment, should be absolutely, left alone at all times, no matter what they do. Everything should always be blamed on the man. The man is the one. And they'll say, "Oh no, 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 women can be wrong." Yeah, 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 yeah. But this was part of the point, because I'm like, well, I know that we don't really have these forms of women's punishment to today. Like, there are no laws, or we don't hear about like crimes in a higher order, or punishments in a higher order, excuse me, that deal with the issue of like women who intentionally, like these forms of women's punishment were not just for arguing and scolding, but also for things like bearing illegitimate children and prostitution. And then maybe in another time I can get into a conversation about how I feel about the nature of so-called illegitimate children, because marriage is a trap, marriage is bullshit. But prostitution has always been considered repulsive and illegal and incompatible with civility, and incompatible with order. Um, and maybe we'll make another video on that. But either way, we'll wind up talking about my philosophies about prostitution when we talk about the review of this book. Um, and so I had asked, my question was, excuse me, why did we stop um, executing these forms of women's punishment? Why did we stop implementing these forms of women's punishment in our societies? And the response was about thinkers and writers of the Enlightenment period, 18th, 19th centuries, etc., who uh, you know put together various treatises that helped to convince the monarchy, to convince the powers that be or whatever, to become more lax with their punishments, toward women, toward women, because women would be murdered for murdering their children, for abortions, for women would be murdered for prostitution, um, um, and things of this nature. And now you'll have a man and a woman commit the same crime. A man and a woman could kill the same person. This is funny to think about. But a man and a woman could kill the same person, and the man would be put to death. There's a much higher chance that the man would be put to death, and the woman would get off, or have a much easier sentence, a much lighter sentence, than for both of them to receive the same punishment, because they don't. And I mean, if you think that that's right in our society, then I mean, I guess that's up to you. You know, I'm the guy who has the conversation and asking you the question of what it is that you actually want your world to embody. You know what I'm saying? What do you want your world to be made of? You know what I'm saying? I didn't create it, and in certain respects, I don't even care about some of the certain things that people care about. Um, but I do make observations. I have more observations than I have opinions. So um, now, some of the writers whom they brought up that were used to advocate for this purpose of, um, I guess lessening or decreasing, softening women's punishments were John Locke. John Locke is always used. Voltaire was another thinker who was used in this sort of situation. But most of the writers, most of the authors that they gave, philosophers that they gave, were men. Also, my issue with the John Locke stuff is that like John Locke is like is abused the same way that Martin Luther King is abused. And we'll do analyses on John Locke as well at some point. But like I said, I don't want the opinions of men about what it is to be a woman, right? A lot of times, a man who is coming in to defend a woman has like a dog in the fight, has a horse in the race. Like he wants something, for himself. So he has much more disingenuous opinions about what things are. It's I'd rather want for a woman to be able to articulate her problems, and for a woman to be able to say what she feels like the problem is. And so when I saw Mary Wollstonecraft being one of the ones with her Vindication on the Rights of Women, I decided, oh, okay, well, here's a voice that I want to listen to. I don't want to hear, you know, these other guys, talk these dudes talk about these dicks talk about what it's like to have a vagina. And so it took me a couple of days to go ahead and read the whole book, and I've decided to bring it here to you. Now, women's punishment started to particularly decline between the 16th and 18th centuries, sharply after the conclusion of the Salem witch trials. Now, by the way, the Salem witch trials, whom I'm sure that many of us have heard about from grade school, high school, um, is that the Salem witch trials occurred in Salem, Massachusetts. And we're talking about Salem, Massachusetts in the United States, but the United States before it was the United States, you know. What you call it? Mary Wollstonecraft is from England, I believe, and um, you know, she published this in 1792. But even by this point, there were already people who were settled in the United States. And witchcraft, by the way, was another one of the reasons why women would be murdered, executed, punished. Um, so, and I guess too, really quickly on this point about witchcraft, on the point about witchcraft, one of the reasons why they stopped with the Salem witch trials, witchcraft, and the executing the witches and all of that type of stuff was because of superstition, right? They were like, hey, well, you can't be punishing people because of your superstitions and all of this type of stuff. These are just people who are just blah blah blah. They're just fucking around or whatever. And it's like, well, yes, you're fucking around, and you're finding out. You know what I'm saying? Because these were very around these times. It was a much more religious time. The entire point of one of the entire points of the Enlightenment was to break away from the religious doctrines that pervaded the time periods. You know what I mean? The people were trying to figure out how to break away from the doctrines of the church, and to build a holistic philosophy on how to build the on how to build like a virtuous life or how to build a successful life without needing religion to be attached to it, without needing the church to be attached to it. And so, that was the point of so many of these writings that occurred, within these short spans, and all these different treatises on the ways of the world. And Mary Wollstonecraft is one of those people who participated in this. And I applaud her for her efforts, especially because of the fact that, you know, Mary had certain wishes that were in this book that were that have been implemented into today, and they were supposed to serve as certain solutions for problems that were going on at that time. And we can see today just how much these solutions worked. So I think an appropriate place to start in this conversation is Mary's philosophy toward marriage. Because, um, you know, like I said, I mean, a lot of guys in today's time understand that marriage is indeed a trap. You know, now what makes marriage a trap in today's time? What makes marriage a trap in today's time is the power of divorcement, particularly the power of divorcement in relation to the fact that it is abused or it can be abused, right? Like it's not like before even where there had to be like verification by the church or by the state to validate, the grounds, to hear the parties out and validate the grounds on which the divorce can be made. Like no, guys are literally being preyed upon for uh, marrying certain conniving women, just for them to divorce them, take half of their stuff, no questions asked. And so now, there's this, and it's funny enough that we already had to create the loopholes, such as prenuptial agreements, so that men could protect themselves. But, even those things, it's like the worst thing to ask a woman for a prenuptial agreement. Um, and she has to concede to that. And it's like, why do we even need to do that? Why would I need a prenuptial agreement if our consummation is genuine, right? If our um mixed together is supposed to be a sincere one, right? Um and it's funny because they use that this is the same argument that they use to say that they don't need to sign it, and or that they don't need to put it together. So it's best to just not be married at all. Um, First, I want to direct us though to Corinthians. I want to direct us to the Bible really quickly. Corinthians chapter 7. First Corinthians. Uh, First Corinthians chapter 7. So I want to go chapter 7 verse 1 through mm, honestly 10. I mean, I could just go all day with First Corinthians chapter 7. But let's start with let's just, I mean, yeah. Let's just start from verse 1. So now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power over her of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. But I speak this by permission, and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself. But every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. Uh, we can go on that. There's more philosophy about the manner of marriage, but the ultimate thing that Paul is saying here in First Corinthians is that it is better to be single as he is than it is to marry, right? So even in this time, which First Corinthians, this is New Testament. First Corinthians is, yeah, First Corinthians is New Testament. So this is even after Jesus. um, this is even after Jesus, and also Jesus is the one. Well, actually, it wasn't Jesus. It was actually Moses. No, it was actually Moses in the Old Testament who gave the, I believe it was Moses who gave the permission for men to divorce their wives. Um, in the case of unhappy marriages and all of this type of stuff. These things have been quite discussed already. But even Paul here, does acknowledge that it is better to be single than it is to be married. But he understands that we have our carnality, right? We have the impulse to want to have sex, and so this is a great place to start because you know there are many women who say that and Mary acknowledges it here. She says that older women, uh, well, okay, so she speaks to the idea that women have that the reason why men should uh, permit women to have the same opportunity for virtuosity is that as women get older and they no longer have that beauty and whatnot that women are taught from infancy to use, and they no longer have, I guess, to a certain extent that spirit for sensuality, right? Like, I guess that attraction that men have toward women and how they are reared, that they become more cold and more bitter, and so they need things to do with their time then, considering the fact that they're no longer really as much in the runnings to have men. Wild to say, by the way. But anyway, but her point is that they need something higher to reach for, and you know, and that higher thing to reach for is virtuosity, is their capacity for reason. But you know, and what's funny about this is that I've noticed that especially among older women, what that part of what that is, part of what that becomes is a realization when she's older that she should have had more sex when she was younger. And this is interesting, right? Like, it's a funny thing because you know uh one of the other things that Mary mentions here in the book is that women are taught that their chastity is the most important thing about them, even as wives, being chaste, 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 for those who are not listening or illiterate, chaste. The chastity of a woman is something that she tries to protect, as much as possible. Um, Although, again, right, like, many women wind up feeling anyway, as they get older, that they regret not having more sex. And I had a question actually earlier today thinking about this topic. I was thinking about, you know, uh, how come it is so that yeah, that they feel like they wish they had more sex? Does that mean that they were just more sexually liberal, like, just for the sake of having sex, like they just wanted to just get their shit mashed in, you know what I'm saying, a lot more, and utilize their bodies and really just went crazy? Or is it that, you know they also would have wished to bear more children. Um, and it's a very interesting prospect. I wonder if any ladies will actually go ahead and respond to that, because it's kind of funny how the same way that we can speak about the trans folks and stuff like that who grow up and they realize, oh, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't have done this. I ruined my life. I wish I would have never done this. You know, women do the same thing with their own nature and the things about themselves, as they get older and realizing, oh man, the things that they told me when I was younger was bullshit. The things that they tried to protect me from was bullshit. And I should have had more fun, right? Rather than playing around with men and rather than just like messing things up. But like I said, I don't know. There's still that element though of playing around with men with the chase and Mary talks about this actually. Mary says on page 26, she says, "Love, the common passion in which chance and sensation take place of choice and reason, is in some degree felt by the mass of mankind. For it is not necessary to speak at present of the emotions that rise above or sink below love. This passion, naturally increased by suspense and difficulties, draws the mind out of its accustomed state, and exalts the affections. But the security of marriage, allowing the fever of love to subside, a healthy temperature is thought insipid only by those who have not sufficient intellect to substitute the calm tenderness of friendship, the confidence of respect, instead of blind admiration, and the sensual emotions of fondness." Um, what she is doing here is Mary is saying ultimately that um, notice what she says here. Notice that Mary is saying that love is something that occurs out of emotions that rise from dealing with suspense and that deal with the and difficulties, right? These are that the passion of love is increased by suspense and difficulties, and draws the mind out of its accustomed state, right? But she says that the security of marriage allows the fever of love to subside, right? Um, and then she's saying that the antidote to this is that uh, uh, a man should become friends with the woman in order for her to, man, like, I don't know, increase her respect for him, instead of having blind admiration just for the fact that she's married. But there are more men today, than ever, whom allow or deal with women as if they are their friends. And we notice that women tend to not want to do much of anything with the knowledge and the company and stuff like that they receive, except to try to usurp men, right? To try to uh, subjugate men, to try to destroy the spirit of man, and to gain some power for herself, to feel as powerful as possible. Um, but I don't want us to get away from this whole point that she makes about the fact that love for a woman is about suspense and difficulties, right? And having her mind drawn out of its accustomed state. And so, if we are friends, right, and so you are accustomed to the fact that we are friends, and so you have certain expectations and how I'll deal with you, and all of this type of stuff, then your love is gonna go away anyway, right? It's best that I'm not home, that I keep you on your toes, whatever. I beat your ass. I yell at you. I'm mean to you, or whatever, right? And I just shake things up, right? And I constantly just shake things up. Um, and there's no constancy in that, right? Like what, there's no reasoning in that. It doesn't make sense, right? Right? And then you say that that women have the same capacity for reasoning as men do, and that if we just allowed the chance for women to be educated in the same places in the same ways as men, then these things would be changed. But you know I don't. I really would go really far to say that the vast majority of men would disagree that the feelings of love rise from suspense and difficulties, primarily, and having the mind taken out of its accustomed state. Because the accustomed state of a man, anyway, already is that, oh, man, woman, PP, vagina, this is how it goes, etc., etc., etc. Um, you know, I'm a man and I want and you know I'm supposed to sexually interact with women, right? And they're the ones who we can biologically reproduce with and stuff like this. It makes sense. It does happen naturally, and she understands that fact as well. And so because she understands that fact, then she understands what must be done, right? She can have the same feelings that I can have, so we can have these feelings together. Um, and that is the accustomed state of mind for men, really ultimately, especially more so than, this idea that, ooh, I don't know what she's going to do next, or ooh, it's so difficult to have her. No, 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 no. I'm trying to bust this nut. You feel me? Like, I'm trying to further my kingdom. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get rid of the carnal feeling that I have, within me, that really should be, and only, but really should be quenched by you, right? As my female counterpart. But again, right? Like even for somebody like Miss Wollstonecraft here, who would consider herself to be a reasoner, or a philosopher, and is trying to fight for the dignity of women, and their ability to reason. Even she has the thought processes of a whore. And men have acknowledged this for so long. Like, men have already known this. Like, we've already recognized it. We've already dealt with it. That is why we have orchestrated our environments to be the ways that they are. You know what I mean? And again, she fights this in different areas of the book as well, right? Because again, she's trying to say, oh well, we're in this way because of men's oppression, and it's like, no, I mean, she she agrees that um, men seem to be. I'll give you the quote. She agrees that men seem to be designed by providence to attain a greater degree of virtue. However, she thinks that women should have the opportunity to still pursue virtues because of the fact that they can agree and reason for themselves that there is indeed a God, right? But I mean, we also can all agree that the sky is blue, but again, we still don't agree on everything just because of that, or we don't still come to the same understandings with everything because of that. We don't all still become meteorologists, right? We don't all have an affinity for the weather, right? Or feel about the weather in the same ways, whether preferring the heat, like the sun in Florida or California, versus preferring the cold out in the north somewhere, Canada, whatever, snow in general. Somewhere it gets four seasons. Philly was good. So, or rain, such as in the West, or even in England, but London, but you know, again, she acknowledges that men seem to be designed by providence to attain a greater degree of virtue. It's just that for her, she is disturbed by the capacity to which women to which there is this disparity between uh, a man's capacity for virtue and a woman's capacity for virtue, as she calls it, and she thinks it to be so unnatural, or she thinks it's unnatural enough that there is something that we can do about it, or it's something that we should do about it to show that, well, hey, if you put men and women into the same educational environments and give them the same educational opportunities and put them around each other, then they'll see more likely than not that women have a higher degree of virtue than even we've considered from before. But there are some certain problems, right? Like there are some certain problems that we have to that would have to be dealt with. And this was something else that I thought of today, right? Like I thought about how um you know, you'll have these women, on social media or whatever, who go ahead and they say, a man obeying me is, it just turns me on. Like, something turns me on so much about a man obeying me, right? And you know exactly what they're talking about. What they're talking about is the sense of control, right? Like when you can, that's why I say, right? Like I'm so grateful and appreciative for life, right? Not just because of the fact that I possess a life. This is why self-preservation is the first rule of life, but also because I am in the midst of a multitude, right? Like there are other people, there are other objects that I can interact with to various capacities, but particularly when it comes down to other people, like it's absolutely just insane that people can do things like to see other people doing things like on their own is the craziest shit ever. Like it's so awesome. Like I'm not the only first of all, it's already crazy that I can interact with the world around me, but also the things that are outside, there are things that are outside of me that have their own autonomy and interact with the world in their own ways, and it's like the funny thing too is like if they look as ridiculous as they look to me doing the things that they're doing, right? I gotta look ridiculous to them too, like I like it, and it's just like, this is just all so lovely to see in one thing. And over these millions of years that we have upheld the species and developed and created things and used the tools around us, we've definitely come to understand certain things about our environment and thus gone ahead and designed them in particular ways. And I gotta make sure that I complete this point, because the point that I'm making at the end of the day is that, what she's reveling in is this love of power, right? This love of, understanding, oh yeah, right? Like when something is obedient to you, right? Because what I'm describing is, in appreciating the multitude, you understand that you are not the only person who can impact the world around you or who does impact the world around you. And so even more so, it's interesting when you have somebody or something that is a part of the world around you that is working on your vision on what you see the world to be and for you, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they're following you and what you want them to do, you know what I'm saying? And that's, and whether that be, in terms of you directly having control over the person's actions, or, even in this case that Mary's talking about, where, men will go ahead and sacrifice, they're all sweetie, and do the sensuality thing and the pretty feminine traits, the pretty feminine sayings and stuff like this, right? And they're acting in those that she says she's disgusted by. Like she says that, oh, stop doing that, like blah blah, stop doing that, even though she also acknowledges who is that? Her name is Barbald. I think her name is Barbald. Anna Letitia Barbald. She says a woman is quickly scorned when not adorned, whether she's a queen or whether she's poor. Anyway, like I said, it's a contradiction, right? She can never be satisfied. I'm gonna play this clip for that, right?
You're incapable of being happy?
Why do you say that?
Because women with curly hair buy a straightener. Women with straight hair buy a curler. Women with dark hair dye it blonde. Women with blonde hair dye it dark. Women with big boobs, they get a breast reduction. Women with small boobs, they get implants. I mean, you can't make that species happy. If they're light skinned, they want to get darker. There is no making them happy. They got eyebrows. They shave them off and draw new ones on. There is no making that species happy. When the Almighty created woman, He created a weird animal.
Anything else? That last statement fires some people up.
Anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, I'm sure there's more. Yeah.
What about men?
No, men are good.
Like, a woman can never be satisfied because everything about her is a contradiction. There's no room for her to be able to develop her so-called reasoning because, you know, she abandons it for everything else. And part of the point of this and part of the purpose of this is the fact that she does need to be prepared to be our vehicle to propagate our kingdoms, right? Not just to hold the baby, to incubate the baby for 9 months inside of her womb, but also so that she can help, you know, be our partner to raise that child, as that child should absolutely have the dynamics of both male and female essences, because they are more or less different in the same person, and not they are more or less they are more or less they are more or less different in the same person, and this is just the way that things are. But it's not, like I said, it's not a mystery about whether or not you know, control itself feels good. Of course, having control over people or having control over things, noticing that something is working in your way, feels good, right? That's not a mystery. But see where the problem lies, and this is the important part, right? So you have these women who they're like, oh yeah, you know, like it's like they understand what it's like to have control, and it's like if you're gonna be the subordinate of the thing that has control over you, right, then you would expect to a certain degree or to a strong degree that, oh, okay, well, this thing that has control over me like really has the ability to, like, you know, subordinate me. And when it comes down to things like sex, right, when it comes down to things like sex where, you know, you got people with different sized dicks, or you have people with different types of sexual fantasies or sexual interests, or sexual flexibilities, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the experience, but it can be the imagination though, right? Like the imagination is enough to get you to be like, damn, that's why you have these older women or older men, these older people who say, yeah, you know, I'm older now, and, you know, I wish I had more sex when I was younger, you know, and some of them do concede to the fact that, okay, well, you know, perhaps they weren't as exposed as they could have been, but they do realize much later that they could have been more sultry, like they could have been more nasty with it, you know what I'm saying? And now here's my argument to it though. My argument to it is that, you know, because when you hear something like this, then you would think that, oh well, then just all the guys with sizable dicks should be able to have all of the sex and should be able to have all of the babies and should be able to have all of the women. And, you know, this is why, again, part of my objective really is for all men to grab hold of their glory, because at the end of the day, her opinion doesn't matter. Her opinion does not matter. Her feelings don't matter. I remember, bro, like I can consciously remember when we started to consider, you know, women having orgasms. You know, like within the past 10 years, we started talking about, oh, you know, blah blah blah, you know, women being able to have orgasms, bro. Nobody. It's not about whether or not. It's not about her. It's not about her. You are the one who is in control, and you over there with your little dick or your terrible sex skills or whatever, and you're like, did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Who gives a fuck if she liked it, bro? Who gives a fuck? You have a kingdom for you to grow. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not about her, because it doesn't have to be. She is going to do whatever we say. She's going to say whatever we say. She's going to believe whatever we say. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Because she knows that she cannot surmount us physically, nor can she surmount us intellectually. So we get these guys who go out here and they say things like, you know, oh baby, I'm worthless without you, and you know, oh yeah, did you this and that, and being so considerate of her feelings. And she's going, oh, okay, my feelings matter. Okay, I guess my feelings matter then. Spit on me, call me a piece of shit. Da 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 da. I've met these women. I've met these women. Who've met guys getting paid right by these guys who want to be cuckolds, getting paid by these guys who want to be humiliated, who want to be, what I'm saying, degraded by women and all of this type of stuff. And listen, there's always gonna be these types of guys. Cool, but for other guys who do like respect themselves more and all of that type of stuff, like, we should be grabbing our glory and remembering keeping the precedent of where her actual position in society is, you know? And the thing is, these types of things have always existed in our environment. They've always existed in our environment, Like, Mary is being very, like, she's being deflective and negligent toward, the fact that, women have been afforded, and are afforded, certain levels of their autonomy. You know what I'm saying? In order to embrace the world, we can't control every single thing that we do, but the example that we set as men, is so crucial to the general makeup of the kind of society that we want. You know what I mean? And you can keep all of the cucks and everybody on the side, or you know what I mean, like whatever the case may be. You gotta be comfortable to a certain degree with the fact that, again, okay, well, this dude is just, degrading, or he wants to be degraded. He wants to pay my girl to and not my girl, but he wants to pay girls to degrade, him and all of this type of stuff. Gotta let them do their thing. You know what I'm saying? And men have always done this. Like, we have always been, willing to allow, women to feel whatever, to feel certain levels of, their autonomy, because we know that they're people. We always have. That's why I'm so disgusted by this prospect that Mary says, men have called women instead of human creatures. Like, bro, like, anyway, I just wanted to finish that point and make sure that I got that out. Cause yeah, man, the level of control that you have, feeling a sense of control, feeling that sense of your own autonomy, and having something that is working in your favor, working for you. Of course, it is an erotic experience, but she talks about tyranny, she talks about abuse. Nobody really abuses that like a woman, because ultimately, a woman's ultimate desire is to destroy. A man's ultimate desire is to grow, is to expand. And women could only understand that from another man telling, like speaking in these ways, and for them to go that way. And we will always be the guiding light in terms of where we want our society to go. So some kind of extreme things have to happen in order for us to recalibrate and get back into the proper mode. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm giving that game, and we cannot respect these women or give power to these women who feel like, oh, I like a man who obeys me. I want a man who obeys me. It just turns me on so bad. Oh yeah, it turns you on that a man obeys you, and then you got these softer, weaker men who hear that and they go, oh, okay, so in order for me to get this girl, I gotta go ahead and sacrifice myself. Okay, yeah, and then she goes and she's just destroying you. You know what I'm saying? Her only purpose is to destroy you, to drain you, to take you away, and because then by the time your shit gets to zero, where is she? She's gone. She's hopping on to the next one. You know what I'm saying? And then now you're even more heartbroken. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and that's just dysfunction, man. Like we cannot have that. Mary Wollstonecraft suffers from a very real problem, right? And her very real problem is that she can be more or less considered to be an anomaly, maybe to a degree, to a certain degree. She can be considered to be somewhat of an anomaly in terms of, her life and her way of thinking, and her being a woman and her capacity for reasoning and thinking. And she makes this stride with the Vindication to advocate for more women, dumb people, but women, to achieve their best selves or to achieve something higher than that which than what it is that they're already doing, right? And the reality is, that they killed Jesus Christ for trying to do this. They killed Socrates for trying to do this. There are many people who were burned alive and stuff like this during the Enlightenment, especially Protestant Christians who were killed for trying to do this. And what is that? That is trying to help everybody. You cannot help everybody. You know what I mean? I mean, the best that we can do is set examples and, find those who rock with us, right? Who hear our message and are able to, and are desirous enough to step up to the plate and be that thing. But to have gone ahead and to try to, put the whole onus on us, right? To say that, oh, men have been the ones to oppress women and put them in their, situation. Again, to the extent that, yes, we've noticed how you are, we've noticed your nature, and thus that we've needed to design our environments in particular ways in order to maintain peace and order and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, like even in that recognition, because as I mentioned, she talks about dumb men. Mary says that military men, especially standing armies, are just as dumb as women, right? She says that military men are just as particularly attentive to their persons, fond of dancing, crowded rooms, adventures, and ridicule. The business of their lives is gallantry. They were taught to please, and they live only to please. But she also acknowledges that they are well-disciplined machines. She says that part of the reason for this is because they acquire manners before morals, and taking all their opinions on credit, they blindly submit to authority, so that if they have any sense, it is a kind of instinctive glance that catches proportions and decides with respect to manners, but fails when arguments are to be pursued below the surface or opinions analyzed. And the only thing that she really does there is just acknowledges the fact that, women have the ability to acknowledge that there are dumb men or men with weaker faculties of reason, which is fine. But, as I was saying that, I would say even the most inferior man of reason, is still more capable than the most reasonable woman, right? Or the most thinking woman, because, just look at us in the times, man. I mean, again, Mary's primary prerogative is to say that if you offer men and women the same opportunity, the same sorts of environments to grow, then they will not show as much of a difference in reasoning capacity as was shown at that time, even in 1792. But the problem is that women have to man, how do I say this? So because what I'm getting to is that she says that although these military men are dumb, right, and just as slaves to their sensuality as they are to women, and blindly submit to authority, that they are still well disciplined machines, right? The problem is that women are not well disciplined machines, not just because they tend not to be well disciplined machines, but because they are difficult to even teach to be like that in the first place. Like, it's already in her nature to be rebellious, to be evil. Even this is addressed, in the book, about being rebellious, women's natural propensity to be rebellious and evil. She often references Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his work Emile, or it's about on education, where he talks about the manner in which we should educate men and women, and he particularly goes ahead and enumerates the ways that each of the respective sexes should be educated based on their nature. And she says that, and Rousseau says in the book that, or he suggests that perhaps reasoning should be halted, like that we shouldn't teach reasoning between the two sexes, because he said that when men goes to bite from the tree of knowledge, a woman would like to have a taste, but that what's interesting about this is that the woman only seems to extract evil from the tastes of the knowledge that she gets. And interestingly, Mary says in response to this that, the reason why women think that this, or the reason why this would happen, is because of the fact that women are already coming from an inferior place. And so, because of the fact that women have had to be accustomed to the fact that they are weaker than men, especially physically, that they are taught to deal in cunning, which is the opposite of strength, in order to get their way. And, dealing with that, or dealing in that way, thus women are more compelled to be evil, or to think of things in evil ways, to be obstacles to men. And again, she still thinks that like this can be mitigated by simply educating both of the sexes in the same ways, in the same environments. But again, this is highly disagreeable. Like, we already have this. We have, almost 300 years, at least 10 generations of, of this assertion that, oh, well, men and women, like us so-called closing the gap between the ways that we treat each of the sexes. And now we have these problems with the fertility rate, right? Because, well, career-minded women aren't interested in having children, right? Or even, as this person here on X says, high IQ women don't want to be around children. So, again, which is absolutely insane, and undesirable, right? Like that's obviously undesirable. Why would I want then to try to make my woman smart if she refuses to fulfill her duties? And in fact, us seeing that is a direct contradiction to, even, like I said, the things that I've been telling you this whole time that Mary says, that Mary has been saying about, well, if a woman does increase in her knowledge, does increase in her wisdom, does increase in her virtuosity, then she'll become a more rational mother. And there will be less murderings of children, less abuses of children, less neglect of children. Children will be able to be better reared. Mary believes that women should be taught in the ways of anatomy and like in medical ways and stuff, like the ways of medicine and all of that, so that, they're better equipped in how to deal with their children, and so that they can take better care of them. But it seems that the dumber women, right, and we call them dumber, but yeah, dumber women, still at least do maintain the care and compassion and empathy and stuff that is needed and necessary for cultivating any person, right, for being a support for any person. And so yeah, man, like, there are plenty of contradictions in this book that I do introduce you guys to, and that I really encourage, especially men, to go ahead and read this book to hear more about how, smart women feel, right? What it's like to be a smart woman, right? Because as much as they think, and can say things, they also very, very much contradict themselves. I'll say, for one thing, that in this manner about men and women possibly being educated in the same ways and increasing them both, we have seen over this course of history that the accumulation of women's education has apparently led us to the state of what is called a gender war. I would think that if substantial education for women would afford them access to their thinking and reasoning capabilities, that they would be more disposed to be our friends rather than our enemies on their own accord. You know what I mean? They make their own decisions upon whatever increase of their knowledge, increase of their wisdom, or whatever their capacity for reason, to continue to be our enemies, to try to control us, to try to prey on our so-called weaknesses that they realize that any of them can and would realize in any possible moment that our weaknesses, especially our carnal, our lustful weaknesses, our sexual weaknesses, are not as strong as she makes them seem. You know what I mean? Like men like, and a big part of that is because men are much more willing to hold themselves accountable for their problems than women are. Like even if a man does it silently, like like you'll still see the change. But for a woman, like, women tend not to change, in silence or outwardly. um and these are the types of things that have held up our civilization for as long as they have. Now, again, like there are several things to talk about, many things that we're gonna have to deal with in terms of dealing with this book. But even in just this short review, talking about the manners of women, and Mary Wollstone's Vindication, I have never felt more vindicated about the fact that women don't need rights than now, based off of this book. Not just this book, but hearing the opinions of, well, I mean, you think you get enough of it on the internet? I mean, wait until you actually hear about what's been going on over the course of history. And I can definitely say as well that we have more than enough evidence, in this time, to show and say that, yeah, women don't need rights. Women do not need political legitimacy. They do not need legislative legitimacy. They do not need recognition. You know what I mean? They don't need coddling and catering. We already do that, One of the most interesting things that she says, I think on the very, very first page of the book, she says that men consider women to be women and not human creatures, which is ridiculous because, men in this time are criticized because, for example, we call them females instead of calling them women. Or even that to say that, oh, well, you're a human, and he's like, no, I'm a woman. I'm a woman, and so and you think you should be afforded certain separate things because you're a woman. And I will say that the formation, the development, the implementation of women's punishments they were a solid representation, a solid recognition of each of our respective natures, and talking about the things that restrain both of us from being our best selves. You know what I mean? Those forms of women's punishment, these things that deal with our nature, right? The things that we put into our laws, the things that we call our laws, are supposed to be, I would think, I would think that the most necessary reason for creating laws is to recognize our nature and to form the principles, to form the foundational principles of what makes our nation, right? It helps to answer that question: what do we and do we not want in our society? Laws, especially, are ways to put like absolutes on things we absolutely do not want in our society. We absolutely do not want senseless murder. We absolutely do not want women selling their bodies out, for sex. We absolutely do not, want, thievery and among each other. People should be able to have their own things, you know what I'm saying? Or people should be able to live their lives undisturbed and stuff like this, and retribution should be able to be made for those who don't have respect for other people's personal property, or don't have respect for, let me see, the positions, the knowledge, the wisdom and stuff like this of other people. You know what I mean? Who don't have respect for the universal laws, what the natural way that it is clearly shown to us about the ways of the world. Such as, for example, again, the natural physical superiority of men over women, which is one of those things. And generally, as well, as again, Mary recognizes, even intellectually, men are superior to women, and there are things that we can do about that. Um, you know, my father had a great saying. He said, "Men and women are not equal. You know, we're equally different." And I think that's a nice, safe saying. I think that's a nice, safe saying, again, to help to appease those who are too sensitive and can't really bear the truth, to be able to, to hear somebody say, like, yes, women are physically and intellectually inferior to men. Um, you know, so yeah, I do recommend for anybody who is interested in hearing a woman's perspective on, what it's like to be a woman, or, again, historically looking at things that have occurred, that have helped to change certain things for women, to improve times. I do, or to try to improve conditions, or whatever that means, to change, to just cause change into the environment. I do recommend this book. One of the effects of this book is it was a very strong influencer for Lord Ellenborough to enact the Infanticide Act of 1803. And what that act did was it reduced the punishments for women killing their babies, because women used to have to be the ones to face the brunt of the consequences for the deaths of their children, because they're supposed to be the ones who are maintaining it. Um, so, yeah, there's a good little piece of history for you. And the next video, I'm going to make this the next video. We're going to do a full review of Alexander Pope's Epistle to a Lady. This is one of the greatest poems of all time. And with that, I'll also give you Mary Wollstonecraft's response to this poem, because she responds to this poem inside of the Vindication. But for now, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think about the various things that I have said about the manner of the gender, since you have the ability to speak about it, men and women, differently, but I mean, respectively. But regardless, yeah, I mean, I would say at the pinnacle of my perspective, yeah, women don't need rights. They've never needed rights. Men have always men have always respected women. Men will always respect women. Well, not if they continue to be treated in the ways that they are. I tell you, I tell you that. Like, I tell you, men are definitely willing to let go of the things that they're not as vulnerable and weak as you make it seem. But even still, I would say that men are more willing to use brute force to get their way, than they are to, I don't know, kill all women, eradicate the earth of women, in order to be in order to attain happiness. Like, no, I'd rather just, subject you to, tyranny, literal, absolute tyranny, and suffocate you under it, rather than, get rid of you. And women are not the same way, right? And, women think things like, well, they don't need men, especially because they have been encouraging science to help them to artificially, make children. Like, and these are part of the vast differences between the sexes. But anyway, yeah, this would be a nice, fun reference point for things in the future. Look forward to the read through of Alexander Pope's Epistle to a Lady, the read through and reaction of that poem. And in the meantime, like I said, man, I encourage you to read this. This is not really a thick read. This is not a very, very big read. But it's important, man. It's very, very important. And let me say too, I very much look forward to when all this gender war shit is over, and we just start fucking each other just like aggressively. Like we just start making babies and we're just having sex. Everybody's just having just aggressive sex with one another. Like it's time. Like, you know, we got to get over this, because none of this is about hating women. None of this is about misogyny. None of this is about tyranny or anything like that. It's not about that. This is just our intrinsic natures, and really the fact that we've already figured this stuff out. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, those with ears, let them hear. I'll see y'all in the next one.